What's up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to talk to you about today. We have Erick that is currently rapidly intensifying over much of the Eastern Pacific right now as it's approaching land in Mexico in the next 24 hours. Also going to be watching the main development region as well. Now, I will warn you, at least for a lot of this video, we're going to be mainly talking about Erick since this is a pretty rapidly escalating situation. So we're going to be covering that. But a lot of the information that I will provide will likely be very much outdated because I'm recording this at like 5 o'clock in the morning since I have work and all of that and I don't get off until after I normally record. So I'm going to record this now and then edit it a little bit later, and then I'll get this out around at the regular time. But the information will be outdated to start with. So if you want some more up-to-date information, just tune into our live stream. We're going to be hosting that tonight. I will let you know what time, and then we will get right into it. But before, as we talk about it now, we're going to go ahead now and dive right into it. Alright, so this is the situation that we have right here. This is Tropical Storm Erick with its public advisory. This says of 3 a.m. Central Standard Time or 4 a.m. Central Daylight Time, or in this case 2 p.m. 2 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So the next advisory has pretty much come out. Its maximum sustained winds at the time of recording this video is at 65 miles per hour. It's moving northwest at 7 miles per hour, so slowly moving towards the coast of Mexico. Minimum central pressure has dropped quite a bit down to 996 millibars. Before last night, it was like was 60 and 1001. Now it's 65 and 996. So that pressure is really starting to fall pretty quickly. We have a hurricane warning in effect from Acapulco to Port Angel, hurricane watch from west of Acapulco to Tecpan de Galana, east of Puerto Angel, to Bajías de Huatulco, sorry, I'm mispronouncing a lot of this stuff. I do apologize for that. And a tropical storm warning is in effect from east of Port Angel to Salina Cruz. And then you have this right here, tropical storm force winds extend outward 70 miles from the center. This is a pretty small storm, needless to say, and this is a very important situation thing right here. Look at the wording of this. Rapid strengthening is expected today, and the system may reach major hurricane strength as it approaches the coast of southern Mexico Thursday. That's pretty strong wording from the NHC that you do not want to see typically. That's something you're going to want to really take very seriously, ladies and gentlemen, because this is wording you do not want to mess around with. Moving on to the discussion as well. So here's the situation. Satellite imagery indicates continued improvement in Erick's structure with deep convection wrapping tightly within the inner core region. A recent AMSU microwave pass confirmed a better organized inner core consistent with the observed intensification trend, although ASCAT data for several hours ago sampled about 40 knot peak winds in the northeastern quadrant, which is typically the strongest quadrant for hurricanes in the northern hemisphere. Erick has strengthened since that time. This has been supported from the latest of WORAC estimates, which support that it still has plenty of time for strengthening. I mean, the next advisory doesn't, the next update with the cone doesn't come until right after Erick makes landfall in the next 36 hours. So you're going to want to pay attention to see how this ultimately pans out, and you're going to want to take this very seriously. You're also looking at a lot of rainfall with this as well in both the Garura and Oaxaca regions, as this is a pretty slow-moving storm. So you're looking at quite a lot of rainfall, especially along the coast. That's going to cause a huge landslide threat in particular, and that's another threat that isn't really talked about with these tropical cyclones, but we will continue to emphasize here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. Let's go ahead now and move back to satellite imagery, do some more analysis, and talk about it further from there. Seizure warning is in order as we're going to the DAPIA website. And as you can see right here, we're looking at this right here. Erick has really started to show a lot of signs of organization right here. You're not seeing nearly as much dry air infiltrating it. Part of the reason it didn't strengthen as fast as I'm sure some of the runs were wanting to yesterday was because there was a little bit of dry air that Erick was trying to fight off, but ultimately it prevailed. And as you can see right here, the core is really starting to explode with convection. You're looking at minus 80 to minus 90 cloud tops in some of these areas as this starts to wrap around much of the region right here. You're looking at this going around, you're seeing this wrap around. Like, you're starting to notice, like, this isn't like an isolated burst of convection that just hovers around and then stops and just cools off. You're seeing a lot of these hot towers firing off. They're continuing to fire off, and the convection continues to wrap around much of the area. And then if you go ahead and zoom in, even on tropical tidbits, just to go out a little bit further and kind of show you what we've been seeing over the last few hours, you've noticed this convection really start to flare up, and this dry air really mixes out, and it's just firing on all cylinders right here. And this does look like the beginning of an explosive intensification phase. The core, as you can see, is almost built up. It needs to wrap around more along the southern side of things, and then it'll be pretty much good to go from there, so you're going to want to pay attention to that. Also noticing a lot more convection firing on the outer bands as well, and it's not just in one area, it's across pretty much all cylinders right here. You're noticing some of the northern side, some of the southern side as well. Also noticing that classic potential shrimp shape with that core right there just a little bit, and you're also noticing how consolidated that the system's really become over the last few hours. So that's a very big situation, and that's a very serious situation we're going to want to pay attention to. This is not going to stay at 65 miles per hour, obviously. This is an environment that is very conducive for tropical development. And one thing that we can really take a look at now, compared to what we were seeing, is looking at this previously. And one of my guys from Storms Tonight, Charlie, actually sent me this. So we're going to go ahead and open this up. This is where Erick was previously, and this is the OHC map. Where this is developing right now isn't even in the highest OHC area right now that it's going to be heading into. It's currently hovering around, I'd say, 50 to 75 OHC right now, and it's still going off like this, which is absolutely insane if you think about it, and absolutely insane when you continue to take a look at this. And then it's going to move into an area of about 100 plus OHC, maybe cracking 125 OHC in some areas as well. And that is going to really allow for the system to turn up and really allow for the system to intensify at a very fast and very alarming rate. And also that you have to understand that this is an area in the Eastern Pacific and globally where small systems like Erick do tend to really explode and really tend to intensify at a very fast and very alarming rate. That is an infamous area for that to end up happening, and a prime example of that actually was Hurricane Otis back in 2023. Hurricane Otis kind of started off similar to this, actually, and then in the span of 24 hours absolutely exploded. I believe it went from like a tropical depression to a Category 5 hurricane in the span of about 36 hours. It was actually, I believe, the fastest intensifying tropical storm, or at least tropical cyclone, in that region, and at least since Patricia. It may have eclipsed Patricia. Actually, I'll have to look back in the archives with that. But this is the kind of environment you are dealing with. You're looking at very low wind shear that is obviously not hindering the system. You're looking at very warm waters. You're looking at a lot of OHC and a very moist environment. Now that it's cleared out its dry air issues, so now this system's really going to explode over the next 36 hours, and you're going to want to pay attention to see how this will ultimately pan out. Now refreshing the page real quickly on the DAPIA website just to kind of get the latest frames, so we can continue to analyze that very quickly. If this will end up loading, it's taking its time doing that. We'll worry about that a little bit later, but what I want to get to now is the models and see how they're initializing this, and kind of just take a look at how this will ultimately pan out. So we're going to go ahead and start by looking at the tropical cyclone advisories real quickly, looking at Erick, and then we'll go ahead and go back to zero Z. We'll go back to zero Z for this very quickly, just to take a quick look at what we're looking at right here. So we'll go to the zero Z advisory, where we were at 50 miles per hour, pressure of 1,001 millibars. Reason we're looking at all this stuff is mainly so that way we can kind of extrapolate and kind of take a quick look at how the models initialized it and see how well it'll go from there. So now let's go ahead, now taking a look at starting with the HMON right here. We're going to move to main sea level pressure and 1,000 millibar winds. So you're looking at this. This did initialize pretty well, just about a millibar short of what what the advisory had, but ultimately not too bad of initialization. Taking a look at this, but you're having the system really start to intensify and really starting to ramp up pretty quickly. And the HMON has the system intensifying to a Category 3 hurricane, pressure of 965 millibars as it approaches the Acapulco region. However, the HMON is forecasting some weakening due to land interaction, so you're going to want to pay attention to that. And then this makes landfall as a hurricane, potentially a Category 1 hurricane, according to what I'm seeing, as this is going to kind of approach the coast broadside it for a bit, but as the mountains and the terrain can have an impact on what happens with the tropical cyclone and can weaken it by some degree. We'll have to see what happens, whether the system crashes full on inland as a major hurricane, or if it broadsides it and starts to slowly weaken from that. Then it starts to rapidly weaken once it approaches land. Then it dissipates, and that's pretty much what we have for that. So that's what we have with the HMON. Looking at the HAVS A run as well, initialized not as good as the HMON, but looking at the forecast track, it does kind of run pretty well. And then you have the system organizing and developing, gets up to major hurricane strength, then it starts to weaken a little bit as it approaches Acapulco, crashes into that region as a high-end Category 2 hurricane, maybe a major hurricane. At this current rate, we'll have to see how that pans out. Then it weakens, and that's pretty much the last we'll hear of that. As it dissipates, then we're going to go ahead and move on to the HAVS B run. Taking a quick look at that, the HAVS B 6Z's coming in, but we'll use the 0Z, obviously. So then you have the system organizing, strengthening pretty quickly, gets up to Category 3 strength, makes landfall east of Acapulco right there, and then just moves inland, dissipates, and that's pretty much where we're at. Makes landfall as a major hurricane, potentially a high-end Category 3, according to the HAVS B, so you're going to want to pay attention to see how that will come in. And then the H-Wharf run, taking a quick look at that, having the system organizing and developing and then strengthening pretty quickly, actually. Doesn't get as strong, actually. The H-Wharf is actually being pretty conservative, surprisingly. Normally, the H-Wharf is the more aggressive model, but this is generally the more conservative run that I'm noticing. Makes landfall near Acapulco as a Category 2 hurricane, and then just moves into the region, and that's the last we'll hear of that. So that's the kind of runs that we're seeing right now, and we'll continue to update you on that here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel as more data and information continue to come out. But now we're going to go ahead and move over to the main development region, as there is a possibility for some tropical development. We're noticing the odds starting to uptick a little bit for the week of June 23rd to June 30th. You're not seeing that 2030 area that we saw previously, but you are seeing a larger area of 10 to 20%, and we can go ahead and show you that with the European charts. So here's what we have going on as of yesterday's model run. So here we can go ahead and compare this to what we saw on Sunday. You saw a more concentrated, but you did see an uptick in the probabilities, at least in one area, around 20 to 30%. Then on the 16th, you're looking at this, you did see the probabilities decrease by quite a bit. But looking at the 17th, look at how much of an upswing that we've seen, at least in terms of the area. Maybe the odds aren't particularly that impressive right now, but looking at this going forward, you're looking at this and you're going, okay, we're seeing a pretty significant upswing, not just in terms of development chances in the central MDR, but also in terms of the area as well that these chances are expanding to. You're also noticing a bit of kind of a blip popping up